Hey everybody, welcome to the Ostomy Guy podcast. I am cold. It's all of a sudden gotten down in the 40s. And so my little studio room is a little bit colder. But we battle on. I love the winter. Hey, so today we get to visit with a guy named Larry Dorame. Larry's story is pretty amazing. He had throat cancer when he was 22. Battled that, long stint of chemo, developed a disorder called gastroparesis from the complications with the chemo. It kills all your cells and a lot of things in your body. And in the process of doing that, his system picked up what's called gastroparesis, which is just his intestines and his digestive system just shut down. They're paralyzed. And so he's had a number of complications with that and recently had an ileostomy placed in 2019. And so I'm really looking forward to hearing their story and getting to know him and his wife, Casey. Awesome. How you doing, man?
I'm hanging in there. I'm glad that we're finally able to get together. I'm sorry it's been such a journey, but honestly, man, there's been some bad hiccups in the road, and dealing with a lot of them this week. It's been a very, very tough road, and I'm just kind of praying that God has a plan, and I can just go with it. Yeah. Before we get into it, just tell you briefly, they're talking about, palliative care type of stuff and hospice type of stuff. And it's kind of scaring me. So we're trying to work through the system, really to see, what's supposed to happen and how it's supposed to happen and really go from there.
Wow.
Yeah.
So tell me how and why this time slot the kids are quarantined and quiet on a regular basis.
I wish the kids were quiet and quarantined on a regular basis. Honestly, it's me being on disability and going through all of this has been very interesting.
Yeah.
This quarantine has tested my patience to the limit. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I believe it.
But honestly, in times like this, when I'm doing virtual doctor's appointments or doing something like this, it's screen time. It's giving the kids screen time. It's like, here's the iPad.
Right.
And go and enjoy that. But it's been hard. It's been very hard for me.
I want to know, so I like to start my podcasts with getting to know who and where you were at right before all this stuff started happening. So right at the 19-year-old, 20-year-old Larry, before your health problems started showing up. I want to know about that guy, where you were at spiritually, where you were at physically, what your hopes and dreams were. Just a brief little summary of who you were before you started dealing with health problems.
So you're right. So I was about 20 years old. I was attending Arizona State University. I was dating my wife, my soon-to-be wife at that point. She was a girlfriend at that point, Casey. We were both attending Arizona State University. And really, we had our future right ahead of us. We were doing the college thing, enjoying life, going to parties, having fun. There was really not a care in the world that I could ever think about. And then about 21, I started having issues with just an inability to eat, an inability to enjoy food without getting sick. But I kept ignoring it because I was having too much fun in college, and was spiritually, my faith was very strong. I would tell you I was a very devout Catholic, went to mass every Sunday, and just truly believed that life, was right in front of me, and I could literally obtain the stars. I also thought, what I wanted to do with my life was I wanted to help people. I wanted to, and in that at that point, in that early stage of my college career was through a political science major. So I thought, I'll do poli-sci. I said, I'll run for political office, and that's how I'll help people. Then I realized, politics is probably not where I need to be. And somebody had introduced me in college to actually be in a program called nonprofit management, and that was through the business school at Arizona State University. And in that, I was able to actually give back to the community by leading nonprofit organizations. So I got a degree in nonprofit management.
Oh, cool.
And was able to then realize I could do much more with that degree than doing anything with politics. I got engaged to Casey in 2009. And then about 6 to 8 months later, I was diagnosed with orophageal squamous cell carcinoma.
Uh-huh.
So base of the tongue cancer. And things, I thought things were tough then. But I kind of look back at it, not to downplay it for anybody, but I kind of look back at it, and for me, going through that chemo treatment and going through that was really, looking back at my life, was a walk in the park. It was hard at the time.
Yeah.
I struggled. I was sick. I lost my hair. I lost weight. But at the same time, I was doing okay. I had a great support system. My faith was still strong. And I thought, everything will be okay. I was optimistic about things.
Emotionally, you were pretty positive. You were optimistic, but it wasn't life shattering to you. You saw it as like an illness that could be beat. You were going to beat it and then get on with your life.
Yeah, it was one of those things that the doctors, everybody was optimistic. It was like, we're going to beat this, we're going to get through it, and we're going to move on.
Yeah.
And so I had no worries about getting through it. It was about getting through the symptoms, getting through the chemotherapy, getting through all of that. That was my concern, getting through that. And between all of my friends, my church community, my family community, I had the best support system anybody could ask for. The hardest part people saw in me was that it was my age. It was how young I was going through something like this.
Yeah.
People rallied behind me. I had all my friends at church, they all shaved when I lost my hair, they all shaved their heads. You could go back and look at, pictures of, 20, 30 people with bald heads because I lost my hair. So it was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Give it about a year and a half. I started to notice I was having an extremely hard time eating. Every time I ate,
all of a sudden, like, did it progressively get worse, or did it just show up one day and it was just bad?
So it was a little bit of both. It was progressive. I noticed I was having a hard time eating. I just wasn't feeling good after I ate.
Yeah.
Things were a little bit off. I thought, man, am I having bad acid reflux, or, something's going on, or food's just not agreeing with me. And then all of a sudden I just start getting violently sick with eating food, throwing up almost every meal, having really bad reflux to the point where that would also make me vomit. And at every turn, I was vomiting something. So finally went to a couple GI appointments. and had an emergency endoscopy. And they realized, because they tell you, make sure you don't eat for, 12 hours before your procedure kind of thing. They did my procedure and they realized there's still food contents in my stomach. And they decided to do a follow-up test and realize a follow-up series of gastric emptying study, and realized that my transit time was 4 times slower than the normal amount. And it would be something that I ate 8 hours prior was still in my, more than half of it was still in my body.
Wow.
In my stomach at that point. So they tried a gastric pacemaker. They tried medications. They tried all of those things. I went through multiple surgeries to end up failing, to leading up, and that was in 2014, leading up to 2016, where they decided, things just aren't working. We need to remove the stomach. The stomach essentially is a dead organ. And if we remove the stomach, things will get better. And we won't have this issue. So January of 2016, they did a full gastrectomy, Roux-en-Y gastrectomy. And thought, this is where things are going to get better. And this is where the solution will come about. So I went through that surgery. And a couple of months later, I'm back in the same boat. I'm getting sick. I'm not able to eat. I'm losing weight, like it's coming off, like I'm shedding, like I'm sweating water type of thing.
Yeah. You have a little one at this time?
So our firstborn, she was born in 2013. Okay. So she's going through. We're trying to manage raising a little one, and go through all of these surgeries at the same time. Wow. And then we have another one in May of 2016. So I'm recovering just from another surgery in May of 2016. If we would have known what was about to unfold before this, we would have never had our second child.
Yeah.
But it's almost like God gave a break in my medical situation through that surgery of the gastrectomy to allow for us to have a second child. Because if we would have known what would lie ahead, my wife and I talk about this all the time, we would have never had a second child.
Yeah.
It would have just, the burden would have been too much. But it's like God knew that that a second child was in our future, and she would bring us so much joy and so much peace throughout this process. I mean, she's a Spitfire, and she's a crack up.
Yeah.
So it was like God knew, hey, we needed this.
How amazing is it when in situations like that where you can look and you're looking in hindsight, and I've thought many times, if I would have known it was going to be that way, I would have never chosen this. And
yep.
When I think like that, I think, holy cow, how little do I know about my ability to overcome, our family's ability to come together, the grace that comes through struggle, and how much God is in control. That's a beautiful thing. It happens over and over in our life.
Yeah. And what's funny is I all the time I question, God, why am I carrying, why does this cross feel so heavy?
Yeah.
Or why am I going through this? And then I turn around and I look about the support system I have. I mean, I have people through my Instagram page or through different modes of social media that are following me and saying, Larry, your story is helping me fight.
Yeah.
Your story is helping me get through this. And I'm thinking, God, is this the way that you're showing me to be able to get through it? Because without this support system, honestly, Austin, I would have given up.
Yeah.
I would have said, and sometimes I say it's not worth it anymore. It's hard. Like I mentioned, we had a palliative care / hospice nurse come over here yesterday. And that was probably the hardest appointment I've ever had to endure.
Yeah.
To go through that, because I've been through these surgeries. I've gone to Cleveland Clinic. I had the trifecta surgery in November of 19, where they removed pretty much everything but the small intestine, because they realized the intestinal failure and the gastroparesis wasn't just in the stomach. It's throughout the entire digestional tract because of the chemotherapy.
Yeah.
That I'm at the place where I am today, where it's a progressive chronic disease that isn't going to get any better.
Yeah.
And they're at the point where, what do we do next?
Yeah.
Between Cleveland Clinic and now I have an appointment with Mayo Clinic at the end of the month. We're trying to see what can we do to improve the situation of life, and prolong it so that I can be here for my girls and my wife, but I can be comfortable at the same time.
Yeah. And I mean, you've had just a few minutes to kind of just take all that in. I mean, no matter where you're at in your faith, no matter where you are emotionally, that's one of those things where it puts you face to face with the things we try not to think about most of our lives. And, and you're staring at it. And like, I think all the time, in hindsight, okay, this is just me speaking in hindsight, I think all the time that those are the moments of the greatest amount of grace, because we are the most vulnerable and we are the most out of control. And because we are out of control, and being a man of faith and your family being children of God and believers, you just hang on God. Like, you just take it from me. I'm done. This is all you. I don't trust myself. There's nothing we can. And so there's this surrender, which I look at the times when I was healthy, and I always think, when I'm healthy, I'm a bad Christian. When I'm sick, I am a good man, and I care about things that matter. And my word, what a gift it is! But it's always so hard in the middle of it to see that.
It's just, it's unbelievable when I'm in the midst of this. I think, God, what are you doing? Why are you testing me? And then I look back and I see, you know what? You were there the whole time.
Yeah.
I just never saw it. Through text messages from friends or support from family, it's God was there. I couldn't see it.
Yeah.
Right now, I'm in the midst of carrying the heaviest cross. There have been more times that I've wanted to break down and just cry and give up and just say, God, you know what? We're done here.
Yeah.
Like, that God has then shown me something a little bit different to say, Larry, don't give up quite yet.
Mm-hmm.
Or, you know what? I'm going to close this door because I'm about ready to open another door for you.
Yeah.
And I have learned to be more open with that. As Catholics, there's a saint by the name of Saint Faustina, and she's a great saint in that she was shown God's divine mercy, and I'm actually reading her story a little bit of how she suffered greatly, but God showed her his mercy through her suffering.
Yeah.
And I am reading that. If you if you go on my Instagram today, I posted one of the reflections.
I read it.
You read it? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It was just like, wow, God, today you were truly speaking to me, and I really needed to hear that because I was having such a bad morning.
Yeah.
That it was like, you know what? That cross, that I'm carrying that cross.
Yeah.
And God is showing me that grace. But my wife is part of that grace. And she's actually right here next to me. So I want you to get some of her version of it. Yeah, there she is right there.
Hi. Hello.
Hi.
So, to get her version of what she sees of God's grace through this.
Yeah.
But, all I can say is that, and for the people listening, is that don't give up. Yeah. Every day I think I'm about to give up, and God gives me just a glimpse of something, whether that be something silly that the girls do, or whether that be a text message I get from a friend, or whether that be a stranger doing something for me, or a message I get on Instagram of somebody that I've inspired. That's just one glimmer of God's grace saying, you know what, you're still helping someone. Yeah. So it's not your time yet.
Yeah.
That's really where the power has gone through, because every day I look at myself and I look, I think, I have an ileostomy bag. I have scars. I've got, 30 some pills I've got to take a day just to function. How is that possible as a 31-year-old to go through all of this and to have my journey? I've gone through more, what people said, than most people go through in a lifetime.
Yeah.
And I just think, you know what? God has me here for some reason.
Yeah.
My story is to not to pat myself on the back, or say I'm here to do something big, but God still has me here to do something.
Right.
And I want to know why, of course, because the cross is heavy. Yeah. And yeah, I just keep trekking along.
Your post this morning reminded me of a line that I think of all the time. I don't know where I heard it or if I just started thinking it, but it's that God's not in the business. He is only in the business of salvation. He's not in the business of making things look right. He's not in the business of trying to make things work out in this life in any way. He's in the business of salvation. I mean, we worship a Christ who is portrayed on a torture device. He was murdered on a cross, and that is the God we worship. And that is not the sign you would think that God would make of himself. And the reason being is that that's exactly where grace is right there. And so, like, I've learned in my life, like, when I begin to suffer, that's when I can mentally enter into my own chapel inside, and making it like a little trigger for me that suffering is a gift. And I was given that. My wife, April, she has other things that she was given that she struggles with, but that's not it. So I accept this. And I think it's a beautiful thing that you posting that today, because it's incredibly important to realize that everybody has a cross and each one has a different purpose, and it really matters how you carry it and who's along the journey with you.
I always have to tell myself, when I get through things, somebody has it worse than I do.
Yeah.
That, my cross is heavy, but somebody else is suffering just a little bit more than I am.
Yeah.
And I have to pray. I have to use my suffering to pray for someone else. Yeah. That when I'm in the midst of the pain, or I'm in the midst of the nausea or the vomiting, that's my opportunity to pray and to lift it up for somebody else.
Yeah.
And that's hard because I want to turn inward and say, woe is me. This sucks.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is justified and okay.
Yeah. And, everybody says, Larry, it's okay to, feel that way.
Yeah.
But, at the same time, I'm thinking, what, even in my own family, somebody's suffering a little bit more than I am.
Yeah.
And I need to use this to ask God to comfort somebody who doesn't completely understand what they're going through.
Yeah.
Or doesn't understand God's mercy or God's grace and can turn it around for them.
Yeah. And you never know how God's using the suffering that you're offering up. I mean, usually what we see as the problem or the place where grace needs to go is sometimes inaccurate. And so handing it over and letting him distribute it through our suffering is a real beautiful way of letting him just complete his work on his own. And it's not you kind of, you know what I mean, having to break into someone's world and have a conversation with them about this, that, or the other. You just let God do the work and you suffer as you can.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And if I can, I'm gonna have Casey share a little bit of her side of what she sees.
Yeah.
If you're interested in that.
Yeah.
And and I'm gonna hand the phone over to her.
Okay, very cool.
Yeah.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you today?
Well, it's actually 1:00 now. I'm doing pretty good. I got a haircut.
That's excellent. It's the little things right now. That's good.
My brother-in-law,
Lucky you.
he came over and cut my hair out on my driveway.
Oh my gosh, that's that's service. That's great. That's really good.
How are you guys? How are you? First off, I want to know, before you started your story, I want to know just a little bit of how you guys met, like early on in that story, and then why you married it.
Okay. Oh, well, if you want the biggest thing I married him for, honestly, okay, well, I'll start at the beginning. We met each other. We were dating other people at the time when we first met.
Yeah.
I got into his car to go to a dance club at ASU. I won't mention it because it's closed now, but we were 18 years old when we met, and we were dating other people at the time, and then those relationships ended roughly actually around the same time. And then Larry knew that I liked working with kids and wanted to get into like PCH, is a children's hospital here in Phoenix. I wanted to start volunteering. And so he used that to kind of slide into Facebook and just say, hey, if you want to, I also would love to volunteer at a children's hospital. Like I'm into that. I know, exactly. That's
a good one, Larry.
So, I mean, and that was like 5 months before we like officially were before. So, I mean, he just kind of, that's how it started. It was very much a friendship, and then me trying to accept that it might not be too good to be true. There were too many things that were right about him. He was a man of faith. He was genuine. He authentically wanted to like just serve, like be a servant. And I just wasn't used to that type of receiving from
Catholic,
from a man. And I wasn't, I remember making a list. I think women do this more than men do, but I had a list of like expectations that I would hold.
My wife had one of those.
And so when he was starting to check all those things, I resisted a full-on what you would call a relationship until the last minute. And he just stuck around and let me play hard to get, and was persistently like there for me until I was ready to say, fine, we can do this whole relationship thing. And so that was in January of 2008, right, Larry? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we were engaged in 2009, and I decided, honestly, like, I just couldn't believe that the Lord found my husband when we were at that point in our lives. Like, I just felt fortunate. My
dream was always to have like a family and settle down. And I wanted it early. That's just what I wanted. And I don't know, that's just what it was placed on my heart. And I couldn't, especially because none of my close friends, were in that phase of their life yet. So I was pretty much the first person in my close knit of like friends and stuff that got married, and we started our family relatively early in our marriage too. And so it was wonderful. Yeah. I couldn't believe I had like a partner that loved Jesus like as much as Larry does, awesome. And wasn't afraid to be unapologetically like talk about it. So that was really just neat. I'm very fortunate.
So if I understood the question correctly, like what it was like, I suppose from my lens with everything that's happened.
Yeah.
I remember the actual first feelings I had. I didn't believe that it could be possible that Larry had cancer. I just remember thinking like that's a mistake because he's 20, or in college, and that just doesn't happen. So the cancer diagnosis was really gut wrenching for me to just, I just didn't want to even accept that was real.
Yeah.
And so initially, I think I went into like rational, okay, now what do we have to do mode. I wasn't willing to accept like that was going to be, his destiny, I guess you say, like I didn't, so, okay, we got to do treatment. Okay. After that, what do we do? And so I remember thinking like when he was the first time he, was in remission or everything came back clear, it was like a relief, like, okay, great. Now we can like get married. So like we got married, a few months after he was I guess you would call it cancer free. His hair grew back in time for like the wedding, like things were really good for our wedding. And he got cancer again a year later, and I had just started PA school. So he got cancer for the second time, like 3 months into my PA school education. And so I remember the second time I was just, probably like in disbelief, but like, it's going to be okay because you beat it already. Like they already know what to do. They gave him a different drug, but essentially the same outcome, like it was on the other end of it. But I think I let myself be so much in the, like outcome. I just knew like God had it. There was no way like he was ever going to abandon, like the plan was going to be for Larry to beat it. Like I didn't really ever have any doubt. When in 2015 is when I think like for me is when there wasn't a solution that was obvious. There wasn't chemotherapy and there wasn't there were no answers. Larry just couldn't stop vomiting. He had excruciating abdominal pain. We spent night after night like going to the emergency room. I had my brother-in-law watching my daughter while I took him, and it just felt like no answers and just a lot of confusion from doctors, and there was not like a solution. And so with 2015 hitting and then finding out I was pregnant at the same time, I was just like, oh my goodness, like this absolutely couldn't have been the plan. Makes no sense to have this on top of it. And so
did that affect your pregnancy, all that extra stress?
God's good. It didn't. It didn't. It's incredible, actually. I had no problem. I mean, other than the typical things like nausea and having morning sickness, and I did have like back pain, but I didn't have. Amelia is the healthiest, most stubborn little girl in the whole world. So she's everything went well. But I think actually Amelia saved my. She just kept me going like the whole time, which I don't know how to describe it. Like she was just, I could feel her moving. Like I had life in me. I felt like this absolute grace of just privilege to be, yes, this terrible stuff is happening and I don't want it to be happening with my husband. But at the same time, with all this stuff happening in our life, we have this miracle of life that's absolutely his plan and absolutely his providence. And, I held on to that truth when I didn't believe it. And it was just incredibly difficult to not have answers and not have a solution, and it just be this like progression of Larry getting worse no matter what intervention that was given. And
do you mind if I stop you right there and just
yeah.
ask you, and I just want to reflect a little bit on that part of anyone dealing with major illnesses that don't have cures and are terminal or progressively, they're chronic and progressively getting worse, is that these are so many times we go into these things, we approach them just like you approach the cancer. You kind of like the flu. We're going to go to the doctor. We're going to get a medicine. We're going to fix it. Things are going to get back to normal. And we have this mentality to constantly, and yes, it's a hopeful way of thinking, but there's also a reality to the fact that we don't have the answers to so many things, and faith is it's so vital when you're struggling on this journey, especially at that part where you're at, when you're starting to see, how in the world does this fit and all of that stuff. But everybody gets to that point where you realize we got to figure out how to manage our life with this illness now, rather than this, I'll take any treatment, I'll do. But then there's that also, because there's so much risk to some of these treatments, and so many people just run into that at what you were kind of describing. So anyways, I just wanted to think about that for a minute.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. How do you thrive with the circumstances that are now, with also not underplaying what the Lord can do in our lives and what kind of miracles, and accepting the cross and not allowing it to be looked at all the time as just, why me? Yeah. But I can't speak to that from Larry's standpoint. I could never imagine living I've told him yesterday, I can't imagine like living a minute in your body. Like a minute a day is a whole day. And then because it's just all I can really say to people who love someone who has a chronic, incurable, sometimes debilitating illness, is just remind them of who they are outside of that, because it doesn't define their identity. Larry is a beloved son of the Lord. He's an incredible father, incredible husband, and managing this condition today, it's difficult to do, and I'm proud of the person that he allows himself to be, because he's just an example of how to not allow the daily things get to him to an extent to where he just gives up. He's not once given up. He's had hard days, he's had hard moments, but he's never just said, I'm over it, I'm done. And I know his girls give him that purpose. Like our daughters are just, they look at him like he's this shiny, perfect, heroic man, and he is. Yeah. And it's just anyone who loves someone who has this, just just remind them of those things.
How has Larry's health and battling all of this helped you be a better mother and wife in the process? How have you seen any growth in yourself through dealing with his struggles and watching him grow?
Yeah, I know it's hard for me to reflect on that. I have a hard time, and I'm working on personal development of being able to validate myself and the growth I've gone through. I know that I have a lot more patience with my kids, because they don't know any different. They've never known a life different than what we do and what we have. But I know that like as much patience as I can give them, and as much just quality time, like it doesn't have to be anything significant, but to them it's significant because they just have this undivided attention
Yeah.
And I know as a wife, I don't know our life any different than what we have as well. Larry's literally, he's had something physical that he's been battling, since 6 months before we got married. And so I suppose I don't know who I'd be without all of, this going, but I know like my faith wouldn't be where it's at. Like the graces that have been given to me, I'm so thankful for, because I'm glad I've never once thought, where's God in all of this?
Yeah.
Like, that's incredible. It's a gift. And it's not to say I want all this to be happening, but if it's to bring glory to him and to bring people to him who listen to not just Larry's story, but anybody else who has suffering and knows how to present in like a redemptive suffering way. But I'm still trying to grasp like how I'm better as a mom and a wife, because I'm hard on myself. I feel like I could be better. I think we all think that way.
Right. My wife's the same way. And, it just in my own life, when I start dealing with those kinds of emotions, my Father Pat here in Wichita, he's a dear friend of mine. He's my spiritual director. He's always reminding me to look at my children and see the beauty that they reflect. And that is first and foremost due to April and I every day not quitting and just being glad I haven't quit yet. And like that is my starting block when I feel like crap, is that, you know what, you're right, Father. I did get my butt up out of bed today.
Yeah, I did feed their mouths.
That's right.
I did drag in the deer, and
He's always good at straightening my mind out and putting me right where I need to be. But it's so true. And I look at it now and I'm like, it's really easy for me to see my wife in my children, the girls and the boys, and see how good a job she's doing and has done, and the reflection of her in them. But it's really difficult for me to see me in them. I see the problems that I have in them, and I want to fix. I'm like, I gotta get rid of that. My JoJo, because we have a JoJo too. But I'm like, God, JoJo is so much like me. She's so stubborn.
We have a stubborn JoJo too.
That's awesome. What's her first name?
Amelia.
Okay, that's awesome.
So JoJo is because her middle name is Josephine.
Yeah.
So it's one of Larry's Diaz, and so we call her JoJo. She has a lot of nicknames, but JoJo is pretty common.
Yeah.
So
my grandmother is Josephine, and my wife she's a convert and just wasn't down with all of our traditional Catholic names, and so Josephine, it just wasn't in the book. So I talked her into shortening it to Jo. So we have a Michaela Jo, and we call her JoJo.
Oh, I love that. That's great.
So how, between raising the kids and helping and working with Larry and struggling through a marriage and work, our relationships always have to be fostered and worked on. How do you, in the midst of all of this, work on together your guys' relationship so that reflection for the children is strong and important?
Yeah, it's intentional. And if I don't know if this is the same for you and your wife, but if we don't intentionally carve out like pursuing and dating your spouse, it can easily just be put. It's not that you don't want to, but if you don't intentionally do it, it can be put at a lower, on the to-do list, where you get caught in like feeding the kids, like making sure they're all taken care of. And for me, I work full time, like going to work and setting. So if we don't set aside time, and so we do, Larry's made this beautiful space in our house where we're able to sit together, and we're not perfect at it, but we make time to talk in this room where we're reading a devotional. It's about the love languages. The name itself, I think it's 100 Days to a deeper relationship, something like that. It's from the love languages, and it has writing prompts every day. And it's been good because it's provoking conversations that are outside of the circumstances, because sometimes it can be literally all consuming.
Yeah.
And if we don't set time aside to foster like the sacrament of our marriage, it'll I don't know. I just know that when of course there's times when Larry's had such, the health battle has been more pronounced. At that time, it's really just about loving one another in that moment, and that's it.
Yeah.
But dating is important. Pursuing your spouse is important. And then giving yourself permission to ask for help from family to watch the kids so that you can just be with each other and not parents at the same time is important too.
Yeah. As beautiful as Larry is, I mean, you got to try it takes work to try and love him, right? I mean, you got to set aside time, put some work into it, right?
It's not hard. Have you seen his face?
I was just with my wife. She was watching my brother-in-law cut my hair, and I was telling him, don't mess it up. My hair, I got to use my hair. My face isn't what it used to be. I don't know if I can get it. That's so funny.
Larry's also a good cook too. I don't know if you talk to him, he'll light up about cooking. He is an incredible chef, and his nana taught him, and I thought that was one of the most sacrificial things he could do for our family is cook food that he couldn't eat. Like he would make meals and just he couldn't eat them. Like at one point he was completely TPN dependent, and I don't know. It's just completely amazing that he does that, and he does it still. But yeah, he loves to cook, and that's another great thing I married him for.
Yeah.
He makes tacos, he makes mean lasagna. He can pretty much make anything.
Larry, do you put onions in everything?
Oh my gosh!
I put garlic in everything and onions too.
Get out of here. So I've had a major allergy to onions since I was a little boy, and I have 3 daughters and a son, and my 3 daughters are 7, 5, and 4, and we'll watch the Food Channel all the time because we love new recipes and ideas and stuff. And every time anybody busts out onions, they all go, "Oh, he's ruining it! Bree is ruining her strata."
I love it because we over here watch the Food Channel. Casey's chuckling because we watch the Food Channel over here all the time too, and she's like, "Larry, why are you watching something that you can't enjoy?"
That's right. The brain is powerful.
It is, isn't it? I want Casey to show you really quick. So she talked about the room that we're in, and we just recently, I felt God has given me a calling to transform the space that used to be my office when I was working into a more prayerful space.
Yeah.
And this space, just putting it together, Austin, has given me such fulfillment. And then being in this room has given me such peace that I actually don't want to leave the room.
Yeah.
That I've changed. We've nicknamed it. I mean, it's our own personal chapel. That has given us the opportunity that in the morning and at night, both Casey and I will come in here and we'll either read our devotionals or we'll read a prayer or we'll do something. We have a number of friends that are priests. We'll pray for them or things like that. And it's an opportunity for us to like almost decompress and to give it to God. Yeah. And we literally just created this room. I'm not kidding. Maybe a week ago. Okay. So I'm going to have her pan over real quick to show you kind of the room.
I want to get close so I can see. Oh, yeah. Where'd you get the crucifix? Did you take that from a church? It had to have been donated.
We actually,
I love it.
So our parish has their own gift shop, and they had it in their gift shop, and they had it for a really long time, and because of the whole coronavirus thing, unfortunately, a lot of the parish financials had shrunk. And they had said, if you'd be willing to make a donation to the parish, we'd gift, something like this to you. And we said, it was just like God saying, Larry, I'm going to slap you in the face if you don't do this.
Yeah.
And so so we have that crucifix, and above it, it says, it's our favorite saying. It says, "Be still and know that I am God."
Yeah. What's the picture right next to it, to the right of the crucifix?
That's Padre Pio.
The Studley. Okay.
Yes.
And our Blessed Mother. That's a beautiful picture.
Yeah, it's really good. Proud of Larry. It's something that, like he was saying, I think it's neat that it's just another way, like he doesn't have to view himself as a worker, it's just, you can change this room and make it what you want, and it's beautiful. It's a place, and the girls love it too. We do mass in here.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah.
So
yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, when it comes to, not being able to work and suffering like you do and are, and carrying your cross, I mean, just like what you posted today, we can't see how much grace is going out into the world from it. But I mean, creating a comfort and a peace of mind in a room so that you can at least have a mindset of accepting it, right? Of being able to get yourself in the right place to deal with accepting suffering, because you really do. It's a place you kind of have to go to. Otherwise, it's like fighting your way out of a bag if you aren't intentionally focusing on it. But man, I love the idea of you having that room and being able to not just, like, as Catholics, we have our icons, we have our crucifixes and things like that. But the beauty is that we're human, and it brings out the human in us. So you're able to suffer with a God who suffered. You're able to also feel loved by his mother who loved him in that place. You're also staring at Padre Pio, who is the miracle worker and will not let a single request go unanswered if it's up to him. So, I mean, the beauty of being able to relate to your family alive here, like Church Militant, and also the church, what's that called? Glorified?
Yeah.
So the Church Triumphant, and be able to, in that room, that's what's happening. That's what happens in the Mass, but that's what you're doing with that room in a really beautiful way. I love it, man.
Thank you. Yeah, it was, it was something as like, I was just feeling so unsettled, and I was just having so much anxiety, and I just could not find peace. There was not a room in this house that I felt comfortable with, and I felt uncomfortable in my own home because of how sick I was. And something kept just saying, you know what, Larry, you're literally not using this room. This room is I mean, it was my office at one point. It still is. Half of the room is still an office. But do something. It's like God saying, do something with it for me.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, okay, well, Lord, where do I even start? And then it's like this crucifix shows up. And then we had the image of the Blessed Mother. And then a friend of mine told me about this image of Padre Pio. And then, we just came together. And then our neighbor was getting rid of a table waterfall. And it was like, how much more serene could this room get in it all coming together? And I think it was God's way of saying, Larry, this is a place for you to come to be at peace, because you're not at peace. Yeah. And I'm still not, but it gives me an opportunity to say, you know what, I'm going to go into this room, and I'm either going to journal, or I'm going to pray, or I'm going to reflect. Yeah. And a lot of it's not praying for me, it's me praying for someone else. Yeah. Or it's me saying, God, I'm in agony right now, whether that's physically or mentally. How can I use that for someone else?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly right. Have you heard of Father Jacques Philippe?
Why does that name it sounds so familiar, but I don't know.
He's a French priest. He's a stud. He's written, I think, maybe 9 or 10 little books. And do I have any? No, they're in the other room. Go on Amazon. Casey, do this right now. He wrote a book called Searching for and Maintaining Peace.
I have that book. No wonder it sounds familiar. Yes, I have that book. I have it.
So good. And then he wrote another one called Interior Freedom. And that is another one that is unbelievable. And Larry, if you have not read them, pick them up and start chewing on them every day. They're super small. You can read a chapter just in 5 minutes, but it's so dense, it'll give you enough to chew on and think about for the entire day, if not longer than that. But it'll change your mind in regards to managing the BS that's
in the head. Yeah. So you already have one of those, huh? Yeah.
I do. It's in my purse. My friend Jen Rudloff actually sent it to me. When Larry was asking me.
Shout out.
Yeah. I know, Jen. Shout out. Yeah.
Thank you, Jen. Sorry if I say your last name.
But it's Austin, I've come to realize in this short amount of time that it's finding the little things that bring joy. Because when I look at the big picture, it scares the hell out of me.
Right.
And I can't control it. And I become a mess.
Yeah.
And it's finding the little things that bring joy, that help me.
Yeah.
That's the thing that I'm working on, every day just to get through. And that's what I hope people realize that are struggling, that, just look at the little things, just, be grateful, be in the moment for those little things, and realize that, that those things are what can control our mind. Yeah. and bring about positivity. Because if we worry about what's going to happen tomorrow or in the next minute, we're going to get lost, and we may not come back out of it.
And it can all change. And when you're thinking that way, you miss the grace right now. So when you're worried about how something might end up in the future, or something that's so out of your control, you miss maybe the ability in that moment to pray, to see something in one of your children, someone you're spending time around, and God speaking to you in another way, because you're too concerned with the way you think something might end up. And it's so out of our hands, that big stuff, that I love being able to go, fine, you take it.
Yep.
You know what? If this is my plan, I'm done. I'm going to show up. I'm going to pray. I'm going to be nice to my kids. I'm going to do as best job I can. It's all you, dude.
Yep. But the crazy thing is I found out is he always provides.
Yeah.
But it's almost like we have to look hindsight to realize that he always provides.
Yeah.
It's because in the moment we're like, damn it, this really sucks. You know what? I can't deal with it.
Yeah.
Or God, what are you doing? Like, help me here. Why is this door closing? What are you doing? And then a couple days later, it's like, here it is. Literally, like, just be joyful that you have it. So yeah.
Casey said when she first met you, or when you were going through all this, one thing she recognizes in you is your patience. Now you're ruining that by talking about how impatient you are with God.
Right? I know. It's like, okay, God, I'm waiting. You're taking your time. I'm waiting, but I'll get there.
That's right. I heard Father Larry Richards tells a story about a man that was at his parish he was in the front row of daily mass, and one day he just went down and talked to him just to ask him, just to find out who he was. He never had known who he was. So he goes down to talk to him, and the guy says, "Father, I'm glad you came down here. I've been praying for my wife and for my daughters to be saints, to grow through their bad relationships, to come back to the church and to fall in love with you." And he was he was like, and I've been coming here for over a year and nothing's changed. And Father Larry said he gave advice that he had gotten like the day before. You know how that usually works, right?
Yeah. Perfect timing.
Seem like geniuses, but it's actually relevant. So he tells him that that God doesn't give us the desire for things that he's not waiting to give us. And that peace that went over this man when he heard that was like, oh my goodness. I was putting so much weight on me showing up and praying that God was the one that put that desire there to begin with. And he's at work. Even if I love and care for them that much, then how much more is he with all his resources pouring his life and love into them and answering these prayers? And I think that's just a really beautiful reality in regards to your prayers aren't in vain. Your suffering isn't in vain, and God hears you.
I think about St. Monica and St. Augustine.
Yeah.
And I think about how all of the life of St. Monica was for she prayed for the conversion of her son, that her son would change in his ways. And she died with not knowing that her son would eventually convert and change and become a saint and a theologian, a doctor of the church.
Yeah.
But she prayed her whole life and she said, God, are you not listening? God, are you not listening? And I have to think about that. I'm thinking, God, are you just asking me, is my job in this life, is it to suffer? And am I not going to ever find out why am I suffering until I see you?
Yeah.
If that is, help me to accept it. Because I'm tired.
Right.
And Austin, to tell you, I am very, very tired.
Yeah.
I am struggling to just to function, man.
Right. Moment to moment.
And physically and emotionally, just the past week and a half, 2 weeks, I'm just like, okay, I'm throwing in the towel. I've got that white flag up.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for you to show up. And man, I'm not sleeping. I go to bed. Then I'm up at 1:30 in the morning and I'm wide awake. I'm anxious. I'm like, God, what's next, man? You're scaring me here. I feel like, to be very, very blunt with you right now. It's like, I feel like, I'm on the ground and God's got the little, not telescope, but the little, microscope, and, a magnifying glass, and he's pointing it, right over me, type of thing. And he's standing from afar, and it's like, can you just come down and just comfort me?
Yeah.
And I'm just like, it's almost like the more I pray, it's like the harder things are getting.
Yeah.
But like I said, I keep reading, on the saints, I keep praying, and it's like they went through the same thing. So, to know that I'm not alone in what is going on, that I'm not any different. And just to be, I'm learning in this time to be more patient.
Yeah.
I don't know what's in store. I don't know what's going to happen next, but I've got to live moment to moment and just be patient with it.
Having faith, it's one thing to say, I believe. It's one thing to verbally say it, but it's times like now where it's the acts of faith that are hard. It's the not knowing if my wife is actually the one and getting married anyway. It's all those moments that we take chances in life that we have unknowns, and those are the acts of faith that God's calling us to. But I'd also remind you, and I know you know this, but I'm gonna say it anyway, and that's it. And I'll be blunt. Satan's a prick, and he's a prick, and he knows where he can breach our walls. He knows where we're weak. And the more you struggle with him, the more God is with you. And don't forget that, because I remember a time, and you probably do too, where Satan didn't have to work on me too much, because I was already cooperating with a lot of the baloney that was dragging me from my Lord and my sinful way of living. And now I've got to find joy in that struggle. That's why he's here messing with me. And as a dude, like, I need to mount up. Like, I got brothers that are really tough, really big. They're all incredibly athletic. I mean, my nephew plays for the Ravens. My dad went to a Final Four. My brother, I mean, tons of studs. And I like the combative side of, you know what? He's a prick. He sees me as weak, and he's coming at me. And you know what? Screw him. It's on.
Yeah.
And I know I'm doing the right things. And I know God is not far off with a magnifying glass. I know he's right here. Screw you. I'm not buying it. And just go right back to what's real and look up at that huge crucifix. And that's what's real. I mean, suffering is the grounding that humanity needs. And when you're in the midst of it, especially right where you're at, it's such a gift that it's keeping you right there, as though it doesn't feel like it's a gift, that it's keeping you right there, because that's what's making you like grab on to the tassels of Christ that much tighter. It's the fear, but it's also the foundation that you've laid over years that's continued to keep you waking up.
Yeah.
You woke up. Thank God. You know, I've been practicing this for years. What if I didn't fall in love with Christ until my mid-20s?
Right.
Where would I be? What struggle? You know, so I think there's a lot of grace and beauty that you're just, from you sharing that is just blasting into that world. Whether you feel it or not is irrelevant. Like, I don't like feelings. I've felt a lot of things that were wrong. And I don't want to feel like one prayer I have all the time is that God doesn't show me how he uses me, because I'm so proud that I'll see it, and I don't want to fall in regards to pride in that. I want him to just use it however he uses it. And I think you're beautifully just taking that on, and he's hiding himself from you to save you, to heal you, to help you want and need him more, which is a really beautiful thing if you think about it.
Yeah. And I actually even look at what's going on in the world right now, this whole COVID thing.
Yeah.
And people, I'm sure a lot of people would disagree with what I'm about to say, but God's using this as a blessing.
Yep.
He's using it to bring families closer together. It's a scary, scary thing. And what it's done to families, what it's done to people's, the jobs that have been lost, the people who've passed away, the people who become seriously ill. But it's also given us a time for us to wake up and say, you know what? We need to believe in something greater than ourselves.
Yeah.
Because we have no control over this. And we need to really surrender and say, okay, there's something greater than me that can control this. And if I put my faith in whatever that is for somebody, things will turn around, and even just my attitude could turn around. Yeah. And for us, I mean, that's our faith in God. You know, other people still haven't found that faith yet. But I think he's really using this as a teaching moment, and people just haven't realized it yet.
Yeah, that's exactly right. All right, so I want to kind of round out a little bit and ask you how this life, the life that you're living right now, is, and you got to overcome some of the thinking that we just talked about, but how is this life the best life you could have been given?
You know, I think it goes back to what I said earlier. There are people in this life that have it worse than I do. And it is maybe this cross is my gift
Yeah.
from God.
Yeah.
To suffer here so that when my time comes, I'm with him.
Right.
And I've always told God in my prayers that, Lord, if it's meant that I suffer, even if I can bring one person closer to you, then it's completely worth it. If I can use this to help someone else, to show someone else God's face, then let it be and bring it on.
Yeah.
For me, that's the value that I see in it, is that I want to be Christ for someone else. So if that means I need to suffer more, okay, but help me get through it. Be with me, be at my side.
Right.
Don't let me be in the dark. Show me the way through and show me how to do this gracefully.
Yeah.
I don't want to pat myself on the back. I don't want to feel like, I'm the greatest thing to hit the face of the earth. But I want to do it because of what my family has taught me in growing up in this faith. I want to do it so that I can help someone else. My whole passion in life has been to be able to help others.
Yeah.
And I thought that was through going into the nonprofit sector. But maybe it's just through this cross, is that's how I'm helping others.
Yeah. Fulton Sheen says that he has a good reflection on suffering, and he says, think for a second. It's amazing how when it comes to pleasure, we're limited in this life how much pleasure we can take in. So you want chocolate cake, there's only so much you can have before it starts making you sick. You love a television show. Eventually your back starts hurting or your neck starts hurting, and you can't. There's only so much pleasure we can take before we can't have any more. But when it comes to suffering, there's no amount of suffering. There's no limit to how much we can take. When we think we can't take anymore, we do. Almost like it was created to exhaust itself in this life, and that's exactly what you're describing. Is what's happening? Is that your suffering is exhausting itself in this life very beautifully. Well, Larry, it's been awesome. Go ahead.
Yeah, I have to tell you, Austin, our conversation today has been a gift to me. You have really brought me. Our conversation was meant to happen today, at this particular time, at this particular moment, and not when we were originally scheduled to happen.
Yeah.
The words that you've shared with me, the conversations that we had, have really helped me today to see things in a different way, because I've had some really tough appointments already this week, and I have a couple of tough appointments ahead. So, I have to say, God works in mysterious ways, and it's just another example of it was a joy to be able to be a part of your podcast today, and to bring peace, and hopefully we can, keep in touch and keep things going, because you've brought me some peace today, and I hope that our conversation brings peace to someone else too.
Good. Hey, I wanted to follow up your story and tell you this. So when we were originally supposed to be doing a podcast, right? And we rescheduled because it was the gauntlet for you guys. It's
Yep.
between dinner time and bedtime, baby.
Yep.
It's the gauntlet. So I'm sitting there preparing for the podcast, writing my notes and everything. And we were running a little bit late, and I had a little bit of time, and I was like, you know what? I just feel like we're not going to be doing this today. So I'm just going to pray a rosary for Larry and Casey and hope that whenever we do schedule this, it'll all work out. And so I sat here right in this chair, and I prayed a rosary for you, and just because that's what we do, right? We're Catholics.
Yep.
I'm going to be spending 2 hours with you, and I'm going to prepare by praying for you on my way and after we're done. So that's just what I do. But in doing that and having that cancel, it gave me the opportunity to do that, which pushed it to today, which allowed that to happen. And like I said, you said God works in mysterious ways. Everything I said probably came from something I heard from somebody 2 days ago.
Yep, that's so true.
I'll be the guru today.
Yep, and I'll be the guru tomorrow.
That's right. Pass that on.
Exactly.
Dude, well, do you mind? I mean, just because, and I know you're struggling, but do you mind if we pray real quick to end our podcast?
Absolutely.
In the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Heavenly Father, thank you for this day and for the gift of life, for Larry and his wife, Casey, for their children, Emery and JoJo. Is that their names?
Emily and, JoJo.
Okay. And thank you for our time together, for our conversation. Bless Larry and Casey, their marriage. Fill them with joy. Fill them with an understanding and a wisdom that helps them put what they're dealing with, these struggles, this cross that you've given them, it puts it in perspective, that it lines it right up in place with their children, their day-to-day life, and their friends, that they might see very clearly and not hidden your will and what you desire out of them as a family. Bless us. Bless all those that listen to this podcast. Fill them with your love and your life, that we might one day be saints with you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you.
Brother, I appreciate it. Let's keep in touch.
Absolutely. I would love to keep in touch.
Well, very cool. Well, I will keep you in my prayers. And if you could throw one up for me while you're sitting there in front of the giant Jesus, I'd appreciate it.
I will. Absolutely.
I got to get me one.
What's your wife's name?
April.
Okay. We'll remember that.
Yeah.
Oh, hang on. Casey has a question for you.
Austin, the only way you and my husband can have a bromantic relationship is if I get to have some type of relationship with your wife as well.
Okay.
I've not met a lot of people who can relate to what I go through, and I know she could.
Yeah.
So I'd love to meet her.
Ever since she's known me, I've been sick, and she's just like the soldier in the background all the time, just constantly at work. Yeah. She's just battling it out. She offers her own life and sacrifices so many things to just keep being mom and keep being caretaker, and carving out time for her to be with her friends and her to kind of be like, she's going to the salon. She hasn't got her hair done in I don't know how long. So next week she's like, can I have the day? I'm like, yeah, take it. You can do whatever you want, babe. But she's the pillar behind everything that I do. Like I'm outgoing, and I've got a mouth, and she's like quiet, solid.
Oh my gosh, that's so so like, here's the thing. Like, if I was her right now, and you and like Larry came to me and said like, hey, so there, like, I met this guy, Austin, and like his wife wants to call you, like wants to reach out to you, I'd be like I would be anxious. So I know she's going to feel that. So I'm not going to call her or anything, but if she has like social media, she'd be willing for me to like send her a message on social media and just say, hey, this is like a non-committal message. I'm just saying, if there's any time that we can, like, if especially just pray for you, just say, hi, I'm also a mom with, like this and that. I don't know. I would find a lot of comfort and peace knowing I could talk to someone who can relate to what I'm going through too,
Yeah, she would too. I think that'd be huge. And actually, I think it'd be funny to let me give her the rough edit of this podcast and let her hear it. And then
I'm proposing to your wife a friendship, and if she wants to accept, ask her to check yes or no. There's no like pressure either way, but tell her to say yes. That would be great.
Put it in the comments section.
Right.
That's really cool.
Thank you. I'll hand it back to Larry.
Larry, can you tell the listeners where they can find you, what your website is, and how they can find you on Instagram and Facebook and all that stuff?
Yeah, so my Instagram handle is really simple. It's at Larry's Fight. And on Facebook, it's Larry's Fight as well. And my website is larrysfight.com. So you can find me pretty much anywhere. Just type in at Larry's Fight, and you find me there. Most of the time, I share my journey on Instagram, and it feeds into my personal Facebook page. But I'm actually in the process of actually going to be sharing my journey from beginning to current of what I've gone through via Instagram stories.
Oh, yeah.
and so that people who are just starting to follow, because my fellowship, if you will, is growing substantially. I want people to know who I am and where I come from. That I'm not just sick Larry. This is me as a human.
Yeah.
And this is my fight, and this is why I want to fight for others. And I'm using my page also to evangelize, just to be able to share with people that just have faith. Just that fight, that little bit more will get you through it. So at Larry's Fight is where you need to be.
Suffering in this life without Christ is hell. Suffering in this life with Christ is heaven on earth, and I mean it. So I agree with you 100%, man. You keep fighting the good fight. I love it.
Thanks. Yeah.